Three Counties Radio. Now, teenage life, as we know, can be difficult when you are going through something and trying to find a way to express yourself. Well, at the age of 14, Harmeet found that writing poetry helped her process her emotions. Over the years, it helped her with big life events, such as when her father passed away and when she was diagnosed with postnatal depression. But it wasn't until Harmeet became depressed again after her first miscarriage that she realised the power of her writing. She's recently released a book of poetry called Poetic Secrets, A British Brown Beauty's Perspective. Great title, by the way, which touches on mindfulness, healing, mental health, love, heartbreak, all of the big issues in life. And Harmeet joins me in the studio now. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
So, do you remember sitting down to write that first poem?
I think it must have been at school, to be honest, when I first learnt how to write poetry,
Right.
when they first sort of start exploring that. But I cannot think back to what my actual first poem was. Probably, I think one of the most sort of earliest experiences that I remember are from when my father passed away, and I wrote one for him and I read it out at his funeral.
How old
Um,
were you?
So my father passed away when I was 21 years old. So that was the first poem that I'd written and read out,
That shared.
and shared with the public, really.
And how would it make you feel, and how does it make you feel when you write?
Do you know, it's a way of expressing my feelings. So when you've got something very heavy inside of yourself, and sometimes it's not easy to go and talk to somebody about it. And for me, poetically, I can express that, and it's almost like the words write themselves. I don't have to put too much thought into it. Actually, all the feelings are there, and I've just got to basically process those thoughts and put them down in a poetic way. And a lot of the time, it comes out in rhyme as well.
That's
So
always useful.
yes,
Always useful,
yes,
particularly with poetry. Though
yes.
I remember my teacher at school saying it doesn't have to rhyme.
No.
Um, does it help you, process what it is that you're going through?
But yes, when I've written it down, I feel like I've offloaded something. It's like a big weight off my shoulders. It's almost like I've spoken to somebody about it, even though I haven't. I've written it out. So I think that is my sort of, you could say, coping mechanism, therapy.
And some of the issues that I mentioned that you'd had to deal with, such as postnatal depression and mental health generally, mental health
Mhm.
issues, again, they are things that are difficult for anyone to talk about, but within the South Asian community, as we often touch on in this program, it can be even more difficult to do so. Did you find that?
It was. I mean, at first, I wasn't able to open up about it at all.
Mm.
I don't think I spoke about sort of my mental health issues and the miscarriage and things like that for a long time. But it's almost like you don't want to be labeled or categorized as this has happened to this person, and it's just sort of like a stigma
Mm.
attached to it, or it's a taboo. And I think that's what prevents us from speaking about it. But then when I actually ask myself, what is the actual reason why I don't want to speak about this? What is it actually going to do? What's wrong about it?
Mm.
And there is nothing wrong about it. Actually, it's almost like sharing your views, sharing your feelings is a way of educating others and raising awareness that these things exist. Otherwise, how will anyone ever know what
And
you're going through?
and you had mental health issues to talk about, and as
Hmm.
we know, it can help break that taboo if you talk about
Yes.
these issues. But what about the issues with fertility? Was that in some ways even harder to talk about?
Yes, because it's a very sensitive and delicate topic. It's it can bring up a sort of quite a lot of emotional pain. It's almost like, so I'm quite a visual person, and for me, it's almost like you're reliving that whole thing again when you're explaining it to somebody. So it's not even just about the whole being labeled, but it's also reliving it, how it makes you feel.
Hmm.
It's not an easy thing. I mean, before I've not been able to talk about it because I'd sort of break down, or it would sort of bring tears to my eyes. But now, obviously, I've had a lot of healing, and I've had a lot of time to deal with these things. So
And and how often do you find other people empathetic or sympathetic towards you, the problems that you had with fertility?
they're very sympathetic and they're very compassionate. In fact, they're like, we had no idea, that these things exist. So, for example, I've got a daughter already. She's 7 years old, and people didn't realize that fertility can be an issue second time round.
Mm.
So it is an education and it is an awareness, and they're very receptive and, like I said, compassionate to me opening up.
I think that would be a surprise to a lot of people listening that, oh, hang on, well, if you've had one child, surely you're
Absolutely.
fine. You must be able to have another one.
Yes.
But I mentioned that in your introduction, that I mentioned your first miscarriage, obviously alluding to the fact that you've had more than one. This cannot have been an easy path for you, of course.
No, so with the first one, it was a really big struggle because it was actually a twin pregnancy, and we saw a heartbeat on the screen and all that kind of stuff. And then to be told, that whole pregnancy hasn't survived was absolutely, my whole world came crashing down
Mm.
in one go, because we started making plans, and that's what I've explored in my poetry. I've actually written about how that feels. Um, but the second time round, I learnt um, I learned my coping mechanisms already. So I didn't want to go down that path of getting depressed again.
Mm.
So that's how Poetic Secrets was born, because I actually wanted to write down my fertility journey.
And the book, you've got it there in front of you, and
Yes,
it's called. Let's have a look at it again. Poetic Secrets: A British Brown Beauty's Perspective, and it's by yourself, Harmeet Baria. Did I get that right?
that's right.
And it's dedicated to your dad.
It is, because before my father passed on, he found my poetry file one day, and he said, "Where did you get all these poems from?" And I said, "Dad, I wrote these." And he said, "You wrote these? You really ought to think about getting these published one day." And it was, I didn't understand, the whole publishing process at that point in my life. But when I look back at it now and I think, gosh, like, he's actually inspired me to take this forward. Had he not said that, maybe it wouldn't have turned out the way that it has.
Because they were something that were just healing just for you.
Yes, exactly. It was never meant to be for anybody else. It was my therapy. It was my private sort of hobby, if you like.
How does it make you feel making it more public?
I feel that now it's become something else, because I want to educate other people on these issues, in the nicest ways possible. I want to be able to influence change and inspire other people to do the same. I can be a voice for people that are suffering in silence. I can, you know, create something really positive.
And have you had much feedback? Do you know the
Yes.
response to it?
Yes, because I use Instagram quite a lot, and so I put a lot of my poetry on there, and people really sort of, they've been engaging with it, and
And how do you put it on there? Is it typed up, or do you perform it and then film yourself?
so sometimes I do sort of speak it out,
Mm.
but most of the time I just type it out. Find a nice piece of
Mm.
artwork, and then
Instagram is good
yeah,
for that, isn't it?
exactly,
To
yeah.
showcase that kind of thing.
Exactly. So I put that on there, and then I write a little sort of snippet on what is it that the message that I'm trying to basically get across.
Is there a short poem or an extract that you would mind reading for us?
Yeah, I can find something for you.
Whichever one that is one that appeal. Well, they all obviously appeal to you because you wrote them,
Yeah.
but whichever one you feel comfortable with. Tell us the title.
Okay, so it's called Soul Beauty. Believe something beautiful is about to happen. This is now my newly found weapon. Believe in your blessed ability. Live life with great humility. When life has taken its toll, the power is within to make you whole. There is a hidden beauty in your soul, a gifted guidance towards your goal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for reading that, and thank you so much for coming in. If people want to connect with you, you mentioned Instagram.
Yes.
What's your name on Instagram?
It's Harmeet Kolbaria.
All right. Well, Harmeet, good luck with the poetry, and thank you again for being so open and talking about it to us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I've had a week, it seems, filled with poetry. I went to see some fantastic poetry on Friday night, spoken word as it's now called. I love it all. It's fantastic. Thank you again to Harmeet for coming in. I'm going to have the travel for you